you've heard a lot of stuff out there. Well, it takes 21 days to change a habit. That's just not true. I don't know where that came from. And it takes this, and it takes that, and it takes that. And obviously, a lot of times, there's there's things that people learn from experience, and what they'll do is say, "Well, this has worked for me, and this has worked for me." And but sometimes they don't actually, in their experience, they because they're not coming at this from the science mind, figuring out, well, what was the real factor in there that made it change? Okay, what was the real factor in there that made it change? Let me give you an example. Um, my father. My father was he always said he was fortunate because he was the seventh son of a seventh son, which I guess is a lucky thing. But his family had 13 kids, and he was really towards the end, one of the youngest, and they were very, very, very poor when he was growing up, and then he had me late in life, so my father was way older. Um, and when the depression hit, and kind of about that time, he actually had to drop out of school in the eighth grade to go to work to feed the family, to help feed the family. And so, really, really, really tough time. Well, later on, right before World War II, he enlists in the army, and they give him an IQ test, and I guess he blew it out of the water, and they instantly promoted him to being in charge of a bunch of stuff. He had quite a decorated career in World War II in Europe. But the point is, he used to tell me when I was growing up, he says, everybody should be in the army for 2 years. Best thing that ever happened to me. Everybody should be in the army for 2 years. I'm going, oh, okay, when would I work that in? I mean, I got to go, you know how you think when you're 11, right? But what was my dad saying when he said that? Does everybody have to go in the army for 2 years? No. But what he said was, because that's when I really grew up. That's when I learned how to dot, dot, dot. That's when and in that experience of training and being in the service, what he was saying was that changed his life. It grew him up. He changed. He grew. He matured. He developed competencies and capacities in that time. But it wasn't being in the army. That's my point. There were factors inside of that that were the key change ingredients. And that's the context and the form and the way that he went through it, where he experienced those factors. But here's the good news for you: if you're not so inclined, you don't have to join the army to change, but you do have to join the factors that drive change. And when people give, oh, well, this worked for me or this worked for me, if you've got the smart eyes, what you'll see is, well, the reason it worked was there were these factors in place. Okay. So here's just a few things I want you to think about. When we change, any kind of change, we change behavior, we change our emotional regulation, we change our habit patterns, we change our responses, whatever kind of growth that we experience and change, that requires some sort of medium for that to be expressed and driven by. I guess that sentence is right. Meaning that if if you take if you take an old iPhone and it didn't have the capacity to do what we're doing now, you would have to install a new chip in there that would make it have the capacity to do that new thing. Well, see, we're like that, and we have our brains. They grow wiring that new behaviors run down. It's like you get a new phone line in your house. Remember that? You get a new phone line in your house, well, you got to get a new wire because that line has got to run down its own wire. Well, our brains are like this, got to get wired. So, how do we produce the new wiring? You join the army. Well, maybe. Or you find the ingredients that were present there in whatever behavior you're trying to change, and you make sure that they're there. Okay. So I'm going to give you four, and I want you to ask yourself, maybe this is why whatever you've wanted to change hasn't changed because one of these ingredients is missing. All right. Number one is awareness. What am I trying to change? And and what would it look like to do it right? Okay, if I don't know how to communicate and I don't even know I got a communication problem or I'm defensive or whatever it is, if I interrupt a lot in conversations, or if I talk all the time, or if I'm combative, or whatever it is, okay, then the first thing I've got to know is how the heck do you do this well? What's even the issue? I've got to become aware of what the issue is, aware of how I'm operating in that issue or problem, and aware of the right way to do it. Okay, if I want to improve my golf game, which I am so ready to get back to this stupid knee surgery. If I want to improve my golf game, then I got to become aware of what am I working on here? All right. I can watch a video, I can read a book, I can talk to a professional, I can go to the range and have somebody, talk about the swing and, where I got to take the club and how I got to load the weight and how I got to what my spine angles and all this. And I can learn all this stuff. In other words, I can go to church on Sunday, right? I can get the lecture, and we need it. Hard to change something if you don't know what the hell you're trying to change or how it works. Hard, very hard. So we got to learn. We got to become aware. We got to become aware of how I do it and how I need to change. That's number one. That's what a lot of people do. They read a book. I've had people say, "Well, I read your book, and it didn't really help." Well, I say, "Well, what did you do after you read it? Did you do what chapter three said? Because what you described is right there. I tell you what to go do. Did you go do it?" Well, no. What's the second ingredient? See, we can't just read something. I can read a book on golf, read Tiger's book or Jack Nicklaus's book. Oh, this is the way you do it. Well, the second thing is focused attention on that issue in real time. Focused attention on that issue in real time. So in other words, when I'm going out there and now I'm gonna be in meetings, or I'm gonna be talking to my wife or my kids or my team or whatever it is, and I found out, I don't listen well, or I'm an interrupter, or I'm not assertive or whatever. I've got to have something that cues me to focus my attention in real time on that. And usually that means engaging, usually usually some sort of outside structure or an outside person. Okay, so I go to the driving range. I'm going to work on. Okay, what I've been finding is as I take the club away, I'm taking it too far inside. I've got to take it back on a little different plane. All right. So when I get on the range, I don't go out there and just start hitting golf balls. I've got my teacher there or a friend, and I'm saying, "Tell me, point it out when I take it too far inside." And I take it, and they go, "Okay, right there." See, and they name it right in the moment. Focused attention. Okay, that cues the brain to, okay, focus, watch this. This is how you're doing it. See, we're getting immediate feedback. Okay, focused attention. Number two, my wife and I have a practice. And this is really, really helpful. If one of us does something that the other one doesn't like or doesn't feel good or whatever, and we'll say, however you communicate, you're not liking something. Well, here's what you'll hear one of us say. Oh, I didn't. Okay, well, tell me when I do that because I'm not aware of it. Great, I'll point it out. And see now, 2 hours later, when we're going about life, and one of us does it again, and said, "Okay, that's what I'm talking about right there." You go, oh, I didn't realize. And see, now we're focusing on it in real time. That's very different than just going and hearing the sermon on it. So you go hear a sermon on, this, that, and the other. Well, something's got to be focusing to focus during the week on what we just heard. All right. Number three, deliberate practice of the new behavior. Deliberate means I'm doing this intentionally and I'm practicing. So she says, you said that kind of harshly again or whatever. I say, okay, let me try it again. And we're communicating in different ways. This is what workshops are about. This is what listening training is about. This is what a golf lesson is about. Okay, this time I want you to really focus on taking the club back like this. This time I want you to really focus on try to say your words without the edge or without the anger. Okay. This time I want you to really focus on when you wake up and you have that thought, "Ah, I'm too tired to go work out." You really focus on what we talked about of the way to get out of bed and text your accountability partner, whatever it is you focused on that's going to be the new behavior. Something's got to make us do that, and we have to have the deliberate practice. Okay. So, awareness, focused attention to make us know in the moment we got to, get this, and then deliberately practicing the new behavior. Now, the fourth ingredient is relational support throughout. So what you need is somebody on your team, like my golf instructor, or like, when I talked about my wife and I, or your spouse or friend or whoever it is, somebody that can point it out and say, okay, that's what we're talking about. Let's try it again, you know, and you begin to practice and then you learn. I remember when the girls were little and they throw my daughters and they, throw their tantrums, right? And I'd sit them down in timeout and say, okay, now know you're mad, but use your words. Not going to listen to screaming. They'd start screaming. I'd turn my head. So use your words. Use your words. Focused attention. Use your words. Practice. Well, yeah, I mean, and they're starting to get the words out and they're learning to talk about things. But we have to provide those ingredients. Sometimes the army can do that. Sometimes a friend can do that. Sometimes a therapist, sometimes a group, sometimes a team. So whatever you're changing, make sure those ingredients are there.